T-minus 10.
All aboard!
You know what a job is? That's when people get up in the morning and they go to work.
This is Scope of Success, where we bring you life lessons and throw a lifeline to your career. And now, Brian and James.
Welcome to Scope of Success, Business Life Lessons, one interview at a time. Tonight, we're going to be speaking to Aliki. She is our foreign correspondent who's been traveling around the world, speaking to different project managers and business people, and has just been an amazing adventure. Today she has wrapped up her trip, so we're going to check in with her now and see how the experience went and find out the last part of her journey. So we're going to call her up right now on Skype and see how it's all worked out. We are calling her up on Skype. It is connecting. Oh, Aliki?
Hello.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So so you have wrapped up your trip.
I am. I'm back home, and it's bizarre. It's
Right.
bizarre.
Why? Why is it bizarre? Just because you traveled all around and now it's full circle.
You know, I had been told to prepare myself for the return, that it might be a bit weird, but in reality, it's almost like the last 8 months of travel sort of disappeared. Everything I came back to it's still the same. Nothing's really changed, and I'm left sort of wondering, what did I do for the last 8 months? So
Right. Yeah, that is a weird experience that you've gone around the world in a sense and seen so many different things. And yeah, life kind of goes on where in your home kind of the same pace as it always did.
It does, and you come back to sort of some of the same stories still going on, and it's nice to see people again, and there's some changes, some storefronts change, and there's new projects that are starting, but ultimately, the conversations pick up sort of where you left off, and that's sort of the bizarre part, because I feel like so much has happened in between.
Right. Well, absolutely, for you, of course.
Yeah.
So where was it that we left off with you? We were in Vietnam?
I was in Vietnam.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I was in Vietnam, and I was in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh, and I had met with some PMI Chapter members around there. They were trying to establish a PMI Vietnam, which was great, and they're so enthusiastic. I have high hopes for them, and I think that they're going to be a great chapter once they get going.
Oh, that's fantastic. So after Vietnam, you went to Georgia?
No, I went to Sri Lanka.
Oh, Sri Lanka, right. Yes.
So Sri Lanka, I met with the PMI headquarters, at PMI headquarters in Singapore. I met with some of the staff members when I was in Singapore, and they were raving about the volunteers in Sri Lanka, saying how enthusiastic they were and the projects they were working on. And so I said, it's on my way. I might as well.
Right.
I could do that. And so I booked a flight to Sri Lanka, and I was in contact with the president, whose name is Ganesh. I was in contact with the president of PMI Colombo in Sri Lanka.
Oh, wow.
And it was wonderful. He actually hosted me in his home. He invited me to stay with him and his family.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wow.
And it's just sort of that happened to me quite a bit, where people invited me into their homes, and it was just sort of this incredible moment where you get this access by being a member of PMI and being a project manager. You have this immediate access to people around the world, because it's sort of like the secret handshake of, we're on the same level. We're looking at the world the same way,
Right. Yeah. There is a commonality there, and then it can grow from there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's
absolutely.
fantastic. So what was it like there? The organization? How organized is it? How many people is it?
I actually was invited to be a speaker for one of their member meetings. Their member meeting in May. So I was a speaker at their event, and there was about 30 people in the room, and it was different. I have to say, it was different. I was sort of used to. In South America, people were really enthusiastic and would interrupt you and hold conversations. And in North America, sort of the same, where if you encourage an audience to, speak up, like I prefer my presentations to be conversations.
Right, discussions. Yeah.
Otherwise, I could just keep talking and nobody stops me. So I like it when someone says, "Hey, that's an interesting point," or "I disagree, and here's why." And in Sri Lanka, I didn't get that, and so it was a strange experience for me to be presenting at. I felt like I was presenting at people as opposed to with people.
Right.
And when I would ask a question, it sort of lingered in the air. And this was sort of something that was interesting to learn for me. Was that there's a very cultural or social difference. Is that it's only afterwards that basically every single person individually came up to me to talk to me.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I'm sure. Right.
And that's something that I learned, in that experience is going, in some cultures it's rude to, interrupt a speaker.
Absolutely. Right. Like I'm doing now. Is very rude, would be considered very rude.
We'd be so rude. We just interrupt each other constantly. It's fantastic.
What about was the language an issue, though? Like, everybody understood English perfectly?
Yeah, I would say that for the most part, people understood English really well. Sinhalese is one of the main languages that's spoken, but everybody spoke English as a second or a third language. I didn't have any problems. I had one incident that happened where I was staying in a homestay in Mihintale, and the tour guide had warned me. It was his sister's homestay. He'd warned me that she was a bit deaf.
Oh.
And at one point, I asked her for more tea, and she broke out a mop and bucket, thinking I said dirty. And I felt so bad that I ended up spending the next 40 minutes like washing the front porch.
Wow.
Because I didn't want her to clean up because of a miscommunication. So
I'm guessing it could have been a lot worse, though.
It could be worse. I think that was pretty much my biggest sort of language barrier was more a hard of hearing issue than not understanding English.
Right. That is fantastic. So how long were you there for?
I was in Sri Lanka for about three and a half weeks.
Oh, weeks! Wow, that's a long time. Yeah.
It was a good amount of time for the country to see. And what was good is that I met with the chapter president and some of his members at the beginning in Colombo, where we could sort of talk about the expectations for a presentation. And then I was sort of off on my own for 3 weeks to think about it.
Okay.
And to sort of try and tailor, I've been presenting the subject sort of project management for improving lives and talking to people in different parts of the world about how we can use project management to make the world a better place and to think of themselves as the champions of social change. And, in Sri Lanka, it gave me an opportunity to sort of spend 3 weeks thinking about how to present that to the chapter members in the context of their reality.
Right.
And that was an interesting experience for me as well, to go around the country sort of seeking out, what projects need help, what projects need project management help.
What type of how is it? Is it city? Is it country? How is Sri Lanka?
There's a couple big cities. I mean, Kandy, Colombo. I think all the cities are very modern. And then in between, you have these beautiful regions with tea plantations, and you take the train and you hang outside the train, and there's, the mist rolls in over the hills, and it's just some of the most beautiful landscapes I've seen anywhere in my whole trip was in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I heard something about. I have a friend who had family there, and he was telling me that they have monkeys were a big issue. That they were literally breaking into houses. They learned how to work windows, and they were getting into kitchens and things like that. Did you see anything like that?
Oh yeah, the monkeys are brilliant.
Yeah, right. That's what I heard. It's amazing.
I was woken up a couple times in the middle of the night with the dogs barking, and I would say, your dogs bark all night, and they go, no, the monkeys are teasing them. Oh
wow! What through the windows?
Through on the roof in the trees, they're just teasing the dogs in the middle of the night to get them barking and making noise. And I didn't get any mischievous monkeys because I kind of stayed away from trying to give them food or anything. But I did see some intelligent monkeys trying to get into houses and stealing people's snacks and things.
Right, that's amazing.
It's a problem.
Yeah, right, absolutely. So you're there for 3 weeks, which is pretty cool. And then where did you head off from there?
So from there, I went to Georgia.
Oh, okay.
And
Now this is just to be clear. This is Georgia, not
Georgia,
southern, not southern United States, Georgia.
no,
Georgia,
this
the
is
country.
not Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh,
Georgia,
okay.
the country.
Right, the country. Right.
I think that was one of the hashtags on my Instagram was Georgia, the country, not the state.
Right.
Yeah, and that was I think I have to say, like, Georgia was a bit of was sort of the culture shock I was looking for, because in every other country I traveled to, the default tourist language is English. When they see you as a tourist, they say hello, how are you? You know, they speak to you in English. And in Georgia, the default tourist language is Russian.
Right. I'm sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
So it was actually really, really much more. It was much more fun as a visitor to try and learn some words in Georgian or in Russian. You had to deal a lot more with hand gestures and numbers to price things out. It was that sort of traveler challenge you look for that in a lot of places that have a lot of tourists, you don't really get that challenge anymore, because they're ready for you.
Right. Yeah. That's amazing. So what is like the landscape different from Sri Lanka and Georgia? It must be
Sri Lanka is hot.
right.
Sri
Hot,
Lanka
tropical.
is so hot, and I don't know who told them in these hostels that they should have flannel sheets in 35-degree weather.
Oh yeah, no,
But
no.
that was
That's 35 degrees. Just
oh man,
that's Fahrenheit. That's Celsius, right?
that's Celsius. Yeah,
Okay,
it was,
right.
yeah. It was in some of the cities. It was in the north of Sri Lanka. It was really, really hot, like hotter than I think anywhere else I had been on.
And humid too, right? Very humid.
Humid.
Yes,
yeah.
right.
I mean, like I was in long sleeves to keep the sun off, and like the sun is really hot too. So long sleeves to keep the sun off you, hat, stay in the shade, drink lots of water, lots of coconuts.
Right.
And Georgia is very European. Georgia, like, you know, it felt very much like a European city, and it's sort of that crossover between Europe and, you know, post-Soviet Union feel. It was a really lovely place. I think Georgia, in my whole trip, Tbilisi was one of the cities I could see myself living in.
Well, Georgia is a city?
No, Georgia, the country.
Yeah, the country, right.
City,
so what was the city that you went to there?
the city Tbilisi. Tbilisi is the capital city.
Oh, okay.
And it's amazing.
What's the transportation like there? What do? Do they do cars, subways? What's like the mass
There's
thing?
There's a subway going through the city. Taxis are really cheap. They all, and I've noticed every city sort of has their own answer to Uber. They don't necessarily call it Uber. I mean, in Vietnam you had Grab. In Tbilisi you have these lots of different apps for easy transportation. They have cable cars as well that go up to the tops of some of the hills. Getting around in these countries is really, really easy. There's trains that go across country, and Georgia is really small.
Right.
You can go from one side to the other by train in 5 hours.
Oh, okay. So what is it the size of? Like, what is that? Like Texas?
Oh man,
Give
I
it
think
some-
Texas. I think it's smaller than Texas.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I heard it's amazing though.
Yeah,
Just-
it was a really great surprise, and I encourage anybody of many of all the places on my trip. I think if someone's looking for a vacation with a little bit of, you know, a cultural change, but at the same time having the familiarity of a European city and accessible and inexpensive, I would highly recommend Georgia. I thought it was wonderful, and there's a PMI chapter there as well. I just didn't get a chance to meet with them.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. What's the food over there? What are they? What's their thing?
So after 2 months in Asia with no cheese and no wine, I found that the top two things in Georgia are cheese and wine.
Oh, that's perfect. Wow.
So
Yeah.
it was the universe was answering my prayers.
Perfect dinner party. It's a constant dinner party in Georgia.
It was a constant wine party. The country is known for wine. There's beautiful wine regions. They have archaeological evidence of winemaking going back 8,000 years. And one of the national dishes called khachapuri is basically like a bread boat full of melted cheese. It's special. It's definitely special. It's amazing.
Right.
It's I would recommend sharing it with friends.
Oh, that's great. What?
You eat the whole thing, you'll be sick.
If you were to hop on a train, how long does it take to get to Moscow?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure. It's not that far. I think to Moscow it's a bit, but you can get to Russia within a couple of hours.
Oh, okay. So around maybe like 3 or 4 hours you can get into Moscow?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's buses and stuff. I actually did a trip to Armenia. So instead of going up to Russia, I went south. I went to Armenia for a couple of days, and that was just a 6-hour drive from one capital city to the next.
Oh, okay. Man, that's fantastic. And flying in, no issues flying in?
No issues flying in. It really smooth, easy, modern airports. I mean, there's two main airports. You have Tbilisi and then you have Kutaisi. And Kutaisi has a lot of those discount airfares to Europe. So if you're living in Europe and you're looking to go to Georgia, check out, flying directly to Kutaisi. There's lots of great deals. And I met people who had flown, from London to Kutaisi for £60, and I was very jealous.
Yeah, that's
that
amazing.
They have that accessibility.
Wow. What did anything stand out, like when you got to the airport that was like, oh wow, man, you don't get that back in Montreal?
Oh, I think airports started to blend together. I think a lot of airports you can pretty much expect the same thing from one airport to the other at a certain point.
Oh, okay.
But what stood out to me in Tbilisi in Georgia was very much this contrast between old world and the new. They have beautiful construction, bridges. They have, one of the projects that they have that's one of the most noticeable landscape things is this orchestra or this symphony exhibition hall that is in Reki Park. And it's actually not open. And it was sort of this project that was supposed to be sort of a highlight of the city, and just they ran out of money before the project was completed. And from the perspective of project management, I kept looking at that as this is the centerpiece of your city, and it can't be completed for lack of funds.
Oh
and
man, just stalled. Wow. When was it supposed to be worked on?
I'm not sure, but I think it's been empty it looks like it probably finished construction within the last 2 or 3 years, and it just stands empty.
Yeah.
And it's spectacular. So if you Google any pictures of Tbilisi, of the landscape, you'll see these big tubular mirrored, tubes in a park, and they stand out in every photo, and they're actually just completely abandoned on the inside.
That's amazing.
And it's amazing, and it's sort of, from a project perspective, it makes you think, where money goes and sort of long versus short-term vision plans for cities and from governments. It's an interesting discussion to have when you're visiting countries.
Right. Well, like building the park with Agile would have been different, right? You open up a small section of it, and you keep going until you. And then if you run out of money, at least you have a little bit open. What's up?
Repurpose it. Like I was thinking, it's empty, but you could do pop-up shops. You could do, you could let, instead of having, maybe there's no money to finish the seating, just have musicians be allowed to play there and have, some concerts.
Oh, yeah.
It's,
right.
But sometimes that requires sort of certain levels of funding that maybe they're not willing to open up. I don't know. Right.
Or they don't. Yeah, they can't get the planning. Right. Yeah. That's too bad. So how long were you there for?
I was there for about 2.5 weeks.
Okay. So that seems like such a great amount of time to be somewhere, like 2.5, 3 weeks. Really, people go somewhere for a few days. You just get a taste of it. But
I found like when you give yourself 2.5 to 3 weeks, you still have to focus. You still have to give yourself, I would say, like maximum 3 to 4 destinations within a country and close together, because the more time you waste traveling, the less you see.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right.
And it's more interesting to me sometimes to spend extra time wandering around, getting to know a place, than just sort of doing the top 3 things on TripAdvisor and then getting out, Yeah. That's not the travel that I like to do.
Do you ever take time off? Do you know what I mean by that? Like, were you ever like, you know what, I'm going to take today off for the tourist thing, and maybe I'll just catch a movie and read in the park or something like that?
Is the first 2 months of my whole trip, I was very go, feeling like I had to take advantage of every moment, that this trip was such a gift that I couldn't waste a single moment not doing something interesting or exciting.
Right.
And then after 2 months, I was exhausted. And I realized I never had a Sunday. Your Sunday, you sleep in, you have a coffee, you watch a lot of Netflix, you do nothing.
Well, I've been listening to the Smiths recently, and every day is Sunday to Morrissey.
Yeah. And I realized that even when you're traveling, it's important to sort of, it doesn't have to be a Sunday, but it can be a day where you sort of just give yourself the, you know what, I'm staying in bed today. And I did have days like that where I didn't plan anything. I gave myself an extra day at a hostel with nothing to do during the day.
Right.
And I would just walk around if I felt like it. I had a lot of time to sit and have coffee. In Georgia, it was a lot of time to sit around and have glasses of wine. And that was where my breaks.
Yeah, that's
Those were my
nice.
days off.
Right. Yeah, sometimes you need that just to kind of be in a place, let it kind of
Yeah.
sink in and just, relax.
Yeah, and it's tough when you're traveling too, because you sort of want to take advantage of everything. You feel like a day doing nothing is a day wasted, but in reality, it's very much for your mental health to sort of just digest all the things that you've seen and take the time to sort of just be somewhere
Right.
without feeling like you're on an adventure all the time.
Absolutely. I was in Venice, Italy, and I was just there for like 2.5 days. And it was an afternoon, and I was so tired. And I was in the room, and the sun was shining on the bed, and it looked like an oasis. But
The best nap ever.
I couldn't. I was like, you know what? I just can't do this.
Yeah.
I have to grab some coffee and continue. I only had 2.5 days.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't spend like a couple hours just sleeping. So
Yeah.
there's sometimes when you have to kind of know when to take the nap and when not to.
Yeah, but I think that was nice about what I did is I gave myself time, and I tried after the experience in the beginning of it being constantly go where I said, some cities I think back on them and I can only remember the tours I did. I don't really remember the city itself, and so I definitely slowed down. And Georgia was one of those places where I took a train to Batumi, and I met some lovely people, and it was pouring rain. And I said, you know what? These people are staying another day. We're having such a nice time, even though it's raining in a beach town.
Right.
I'm going to stay an extra day. And even though we're doing nothing, we're kind of doing nothing together.
Yeah.
And this is sort of real life. And it was nice to have those moments of just having real life connections with people. You just happen to be somewhere else in the world.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. So where after Georgia did you go?
So after Georgia, I sort of said, okay, I'm done with the adventure travel and the exploring. I went to Greece and visited my family in Thessaloniki.
Oh, okay.
And got to see some cousins I hadn't seen in about a decade.
Right.
And then Berlin to see some friends. And then London to see some friends and family as well. So the last 3 weeks of my trip were very just touching base with people I hadn't seen in a long time.
That's amazing. Wow, that's very cool. You know what I was thinking of the other day? I was thinking that I have never been in anybody's home in another country before. Don't you think
Really?
Don't you think that's strange?
You got to travel with PMI because I was in a lot of people's PMI homes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to kind of get to experience that. But yeah, no, I mean, I guess I don't know anybody outside the country that well.
I'm telling you, PMI is the password.
Right, absolutely.
It really is. I was hosted in people's homes. I was invited, to stay in there when a PMI volunteer or a board member, if I was doing a presentation, they invited me to stay overnight in their homes with their families. They took me with them, to visit things in the cities. I was invited to people's homes for lunch, or to their offices. I mean, it really was for me this way of connecting to people on a level other than being a tourist. It was sort of, it's so tragic now to think of Anthony Bourdain. His passing was such a shock.
Right.
But I mean, his sort of mottos, and he was sort of my guru of travel. He had food as a way of getting into, to see the nitty gritty and the real life of people. I mean, I had PMI, which was sort of my answer, my way of having a conversation with people about something other than tourism.
Yeah, that's a great insight. Yeah, I used skiing for a while to travel around and do stuff like that too.
Yeah,
not to that level, but that's amazing.
That's it. And I mean, if you have ski clubs around the world, you just have to. It's amazing the response. I didn't expect as many people who did respond. I reached out to people and said, hey, I'm from PMI Montreal. I'm traveling around. I'd love to get to know your city. And I mean, if there's any value to you and your members of meeting with me, that would be wonderful. And I think 90% responded with yes, of course. And like, when are you free? And when can I meet you? And can we pick you up from the airport? One family drove me to the airport with the kids at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Like, that level of hospitality.
That's amazing. That's amazing you said the 90% thing, because that's interesting. We had a guest on the show who was traveling around the United States and doing talking engagements in every state. And he said that he reached out to a whole bunch of people, and he mentioned a number too. He said he had a percentage of 10% of people reached out to him,
Really?
for speaking engagements or things like that. It's interesting. The different countries, something like that. We got a different result.
I don't know. I think also, I mean, I was sort of, my value proposition for the chapters while I was traveling was, I mean, it can be anything. It can be a conversation over a cup of coffee. It can be a presentation to your chapter members. It can be, just give me tips. I wasn't looking for something, and I don't know if it's something with my expectations were low, so I was just blown away.
Right.
And also I used the PMI as like a domino effect, where if one chapter was pleased with meeting with me, I would say, well, do you know anybody in the next country? And inevitably they did.
Yeah.
They say, oh, I'll write you an introduction email to the president of this chapter. And that introduction email, like, for me, that was something that I took really to heart, because it was like they were vouching for having met me.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Yeah,
and for me, it was the beautiful part of it,
Yeah.
like the fact that they met me, they thought that there was quality, that there was something interesting that in the conversations that we had, that it was worthwhile giving that introduction to the next chapter.
Yeah, that really is a nice thing to see. Absolutely. Yeah. What so out of all the places, what stands out in your mind as something that you think was amazing, that maybe it's a place you want to go back to, or that really stood out?
If I could do it all over again, I'd do it all over again.
Right.
Easter Island still is one of those, just like a dream. Like, I still can't believe how perfect a place it was.
Right.
Vietnam for the food.
Yeah, right.
Tbilisi, the city in Georgia, for just an atmosphere of just really interesting people, like hospitable, and just it's tough. I mean, everywhere had its strong points. South America, the people in South America, their generosity, their spirit was just, sometimes they were so familial, like they met you and they hugged you. And I'm used to sort of, oh, where's my 3 feet of personal space? And
yeah.
No, you had to sort of let that go and be like, no, you're family now. And
That's
I was like,
nice.
oh my gosh,
Yeah, right. That's nice that people come together like that. Yeah, no, it's amazing. Yeah.
Even as project managers, even in the PMI chapters, they had that spirit, that atmosphere was very familial and very friendly, and there was no personal space. It was everyone's hugging everyone. I'm like, that's something that you want to join. That's something you want to be a part of, and
Absolutely.
I thought that was really special.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that you're back, what's the plan now? What are you thinking?
Well, tomorrow I have to move. So tomorrow I have a new apartment I have to move into. So I've been painting, and it's getting back to real life kind of slowly. I go back to work in 3 weeks. So back to my role in marketing communications with PMI Montreal, and I'm looking forward to bringing some of the lessons I learned from the different chapters around the world back into my reality.
Oh, that's awesome. So how many days did you have? How long was it? Do you have to count?
The whole trip?
Yeah.
8 months, 2 days.
Okay, 8 months, 2 days. Do you have a number, or are you giving out a ballpark number of a cost?
Oh yeah, no, I'm not talking about it.
Okay. That's something you just want to forget about.
I mean, when I went into this, like a good PMP, I had, my optimistic, my realistic, my pessimistic, I'm a little bit over my pessimistic. So
okay.
I'm a little bit over budget, but at the same time, I thought to myself, this is once in a lifetime.
Oh, absolutely, and of course.
The areas of overspending were things that I could, if somebody asked me, what would be the budget that you could recommend, I could give them a number and tell them, just make sure you don't start drinking $8 smoothies in New Zealand every day.
Right.
I mean, those will break your budget pretty fast. But I Yeah, I'm not giving out numbers.
Okay. Yeah. What's
If somebody wants a number, they can call me personally, and I'll walk them through a nice little month-to-month budget based on the different countries.
Very cool. Are you now? There is a limb coming up in California. Are you going to Los Angeles? I think it is. Are you going to that?
I'm a speaker at the limb.
Oh, that's excellent.
Presentation.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and my co-speaker is the president of PMI North Peru. So I've invited him to be my co-speaker, and we're presenting on the topic of volunteer cultures and the importance of project management around the world. So based on my travels, sort of how different chapters treat their volunteers and how they integrate their members, and at the level at which project management influences change in these different countries.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, James and I will be out there, so we will be recording. We'll get you in studio. We'll do...
We will absolutely have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so this has been fantastic speaking with you. Thank you for all the journeys. And of course, we're going to continue because you are in Canada, so you're still our foreign correspondent.
I am. I'm still foreign.
Yes.
That's right.
Not foreign to you, but I guess foreign to us here in New York.
I look forward to seeing you guys in LA, and we'll definitely have to do something special together for all your listeners.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you very much, and we'll speak to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Scope of Success is brought to you by PMI Long Island, the Project Management Institute of Long Island. For more information, visit pmilic.org.